go.
What is up, Big John?
Big doggy, can you hear me okay? Is my audio coming through good?
Yeah, I think we're all good now, man. I was getting a little nervous.
I know. We got to keep the audience on edge.
Yeah. Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome.
So
I'm
let's
doing
go. Let's
awesome.
start right off, man. Big John, congrats. You're a dad. Are you sleeping through the night?
Yeah, we've had our hands full, house. We've had our hands full. I'll tell you this, my wife is a superhero. She's taken a lot of the nighttime duties, just she's breastfeeding and I'm doing all I can during the day, daytime diaper changes, cooking, chores, all that, because I'm essentially working from home right
Yeah.
now. But no, she's been incredible. We're obsessed with our little guy. So it's been fun being a dad.
I saw the updated pictures. I was like, okay, blonde hair, blonde hair.
I know he's a little strawberry blonde. He's got my mom's side of the family.
That's awesome. Well, I'm happy for you and D, man. I'm super happy, and you're gonna kill it. I know D's gonna kill it, and we're all the people that know you are looking forward to you getting you back into North Carolina and
Oh
all
yeah,
the good stuff out
we
there.
can't
And
wait.
so I think most people know by now. Why don't you give us a quick update on what's next for John Heck?
Yeah, so I've got a YouTube video dropping where I go in depth on this. It's coming out this weekend. But long story short, for everyone tuned in right now, um, I've been in football strength and conditioning for the last 9 years, and I have since stepped away from that role, and I've gone into full-time private coaching. I've had a coaching business going on kind of on the side in the background the last few years, working with nutrition clients, doing training programming for strongmen, powerlifters, bodybuilders, general population folks. And now I'm expanding that out to athletes as well, team sport athletes, football players. Um, and I'm going full time with it. I'm moving back to Tar Heel land, North Carolina. So it'll be a good, easy drive from you. But my wife, she's got family there. I've got family there. We have friends there. I spent most of my life there, so we're gonna go back there, raise our son, be in a great area, and I'll be eventually. I would love to open up a brick and mortar potentially. That's a little bit down the road, but in the meantime, doing full-time online coaching. I've got my website releasing here soon, where there will be ebooks and programs, all that going on, and I've got a YouTube channel going. So full steam ahead with content production and private coaching.
So we've we've known each other now for, wow, shoot, going on 8 years already. 2025 will be the 8th year that we started chatting, and it was probably it was around this time when you just finished playing, and we brought you out to talk about joining the Panthers. Yeah, that's going to be 8 years here. What, in March or like late February, March, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, spot on. So that was in
Yeah,
2017.
crazy,
Um,
man. Let's go. It's a long
I
time.
I remember that interview like it was yesterday. I mean, it feels like a lifetime ago, but I can remember it clear as day. I
Well,
was so I was so nervous.
and now, but that was one of the things that we talked about back then, and we brought it up several times in conversations about career evolution, what's next, where do you think the value propositions are in team coaching, whether it's the university level, the professional level. We've talked about private sector stuff, and and I tell this to a lot of people because I found myself in the same situation a lot of times. Me and you've talked about it, and you're gonna laugh. Is it you love coaching the teams, or do you just love the
Iron
iron?
game.
And
Yep.
again, I mean, that's why I got in it. I mean, I love working with all the sports in my career. I tell everybody I loved working with the women's sports at Boise State, just flat out loved it. But I just loved the iron, so I didn't care who I was coaching. I just cared that I was in a weight room and got to hang around with as many athletes as I could. And then, this is probably another discussion for us down the road, but then the evolution of how important people thought strength training was for athletes. And now it became where, well, I want my own strength coach for my sport. Now I want mine. And now it's just a whole different conglomerate of professional or career choice than it was when we got into it. I mean, when I got into it, it was, man, I just loved the weight room. And you just anticipated coaching 10, 12, 14, 15 sports. And now, you know, in your era, it was pretty much, especially if you were if you played football, it was like, I don't have to work with those other sports. I'm going to be a football guy. And there's pluses and minuses to that as a career. Obviously, recognition financially, those jobs are paying a lot more at the university level than, what's up, Al? Than there are at the, you know, in the Olympic sports. As my son is an Olympic sports strength coach, so I know the battles that the Olympic sports strength coaches. But how, you know, you did some things like, and again, I'm an old man. Me and your dad played about the same time in college, so it's like I'm proud of some of the decisions you made, because not a lot of people on your come up could make critical life decisions that you made. Forget about leaving collegiate and going to the private sector, man. You've been talking about that. I appreciate that, Al. Al, we bring it from the sack. That's all you need to understand. And Big John didn't play at ASU, but he knows what bringing from the sack means. And but talk about what I thought was a monster decision, and what I would call a grown man decision of walking away from an NFL team because you felt like your career as a coach would evolve better by going back to the college setting for a really good position at Troy.
Yeah, I mean it was a hard decision, and one a lot of people questioned me on. I mean, from the outside looking in, the perception would be from many people, oh, the NFL, that's the pinnacle. You know, why would you leave for a group of five program like Troy? I mean, the reality is just we didn't get to have much of an impact as a strength and conditioning coach at that level. I mean, we got the guys for, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir with you, but we got the guys for a few weeks in the off season, a portion of the team, you know, and then in season, it's at least the way they do things over there, it's very heavily data driven, sports science driven, return to play, a very heavy medical influence. And I found myself, I was spending more time doing soft tissue work on guys than I was training guys. And I wasn't, I felt like I was losing my edge as a coach. And you know, I wanted to get back to it where we were truly developing players and we could have the guys year round and we're making an impact and we're able to truly write a extended program. We're not just limited to a few weeks and we having no idea which guys we're going to have and when. We can write a real program and
Yeah.
program out a winter and a spring and an entire summer and the in season. And I just wanted to go back and have that impact. So I mean, I took a pay cut, moved out to small town Troy, Alabama, because I just wanted to be on the floor banging weights again. And you know, we didn't get to have that in the NFL.
Well, and I also thought what I thought you would benefit the most was, and again, it's just the way it works nowadays, the fact that you had moved to the top of the depth chart. Like
Yeah,
when you was with us, you were an intern, but you were the season-long intern, so that rated higher than the off-season interns.
right.
And then when you went back to Carolina, you know, you were, you know, like the 3-4, or you know, and again, I don't disrespect those positions, but a lot of times, depending on how your coach sets it up, they're like glorified GAs. You don't got as much input as you'd like. You feel like where you're losing your value. You went to Troy, and when you laid out to me what you had going on as the lead assistant at Troy, I said, however long he stays there, he'll be 3 times as good a coach as he's already become. So just that, even that 1 year, I mean, leading the internship program, being the number one guy, I mean, that's a whole different respect level from the players, regardless. I mean, even I know, like, when I went back to Wake Forest to work and having played there, there's the respect of the former player, but they also are smart enough to know where you fit in on the depth charts.
Exactly.
You know, and
Yeah. I was in a crowded room in Houston. I mean, there's a lot of guys on that staff, and it's hard to get a voice, and it's hard to, you got five different people trying to write the program, and whereas, like you said, at Troy, I get to go be the assistant director, where I operated as head nutritionist. I got to run the GPS. I got to lead up the internship development program. I got to handle a lot of the administrative duties, and then, of course, just the bigger responsibility in the hierarchy as it pertains to the players and just your impact in the building. So I mean, just being there a year in that role, I matured the equivalent of 5 years, I feel like, had I, being back in the other setting. So it was a great decision. And, um, you know, stepping away from that had nothing to do with being unhappy there. I love the guy I work for, Daryl Bauer. He was an amazing boss, amazing leader, empowered me. We had an amazing head football coach in Jared Parker. I thought we had a great culture in the building. It's just number one, we had a baby, and just I've got this business that's been going on that's profitable. I've been thinking about doing this for years. I didn't want to have to uproot our family and move three more times in the next 5 years chasing jobs. And even though Dee would have, my wife would have, she knew what she was signing up for. Um, but then, college football's just changed so much. I mean, it used to be you get to develop kids for 3, 4, 5 years, and now it's like half the roster transferred out, and we're just starting from scratch, recruiting a brand new roster, all of which are going to transfer out after this year, you know?
yeah, I mean, we can again, just so everybody does know, and you guys can spread the word. We're not going to do this weekly because I think people will get burnt out, but we're going to continue this role, and especially because John and I, man, we just got a really unique friendship. It's not even mentorship anymore. I mean, I consider John a friend, and people know I don't use that term very lightly at all. And we've got a lot of commonalities, even though we've had different experiences with them. So we don't want to like dive into too much. We want to just break the ice. But what we want you guys to know is there's more of this going to come, and we're not shutting off yet. And we are going to look to do a live event in North Carolina. So if you're interested, the easiest way for us to make it come to fruition is to know people would be interested in attending. It'll be I put on plenty of these. It'll be a Friday afternoon, Saturday, all day Saturday, and wrap up Sunday around after lunch. One thing I can promise is my goal is to over deliver on these, and you can talk to people who've attended mine and Mike Robertson's. Saturdays all day. We go until we stop. That's why we do it. If we say we're going from 8 to whenever, we've wrapped things up at 10:30, 11 at night. So don't be afraid to know that your investment, we will pay back the investment. And John's, I always say about different guys, and I was fortunate early on in my career, or not early on, but as what I called the niche era came out in strength and conditioning, and people realized before what I call department heads and the multi-headed monsters that have become performance departments and high performance managers overseeing numerous leads. It was always important for strength coaches on the come up to figure out something they had a secondary passion in. And there is no doubt in my mind what John Hex is. It's nutrition. And talk to us a little bit, not so much about, my thing is, hey, it's one thing to get cooled into nutrition and talk diet, but not only do you live the code, you're exploiting the code, and you've got a cool thing you're getting ready to do. I won't say because that's not from my story, but what got you so infatuated with nutrition to the point where the way you train throughout the year mimics your diets, and like, hey, I'm going to suck down to 287 and then bulk back up to 320. And the way I periodize my year, these are how every year I gain more lean body mass. I mean, hey, you know my diet sucks. So although I've cleaned it up a lot, I've got a unique plan that's fitting my lifestyle. But tell me how that even resonates with an offensive lineman who has to add extra adipose tissue just to compete at a high level like you did on a Power 5 football program.
Yeah, so for me, my interest in nutrition started early. Most kids, they grow up, their heroes, their idols are professional athletes, NFL, MLB, whatever it is. I, from an early age, idolized lifters and bodybuilders. I grew up in an NFL household. The NFL guys, they were normal to me. They were just dad's coworkers. But the power lifters, the bodybuilders, those are my heroes. And there was, I was gravitated more towards the strength, the powerlifting. I wanted to be strong, have a big bench, big squat. But as an offensive lineman, I spent most of my college and high school career around 20% body fat. And I'd always I want to have abs one day. I've always loved the bodybuilding side of things. Man, I would love to, when I'm done with football, diet down and have abs. And I'd followed along with the bodybuilders and, was so intrigued by the dieting side of it. So the first guy I actually reached out to was Stan Efferding. I was like, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I want someone to coach me. So I reached out to Stan Efferding. He kind of got me on the vertical diet, and then over time I started. After a year of doing that, I reached out to a lower level bodybuilding coach where I could get a little bit more one-on-one attention, and I dieted down. I got abs. I got really lean, and I fell in love with the process. But then what I realized was by getting really lean, it set me up to then gain a ton of muscle. And there's science behind that. When you diet down really lean, you leave your body predisposed to utilizing nutrients much better. You can utilize carbs much better. You've sort of got this blank slate where you can add on good quality weight. You've got a runway where you can add a little bit of fat and still be lean as you gain size back. So after doing a big diet, I gained weight, I gained tissue, and I was shattering PRs. So I was like, you know what? There really is something to this whole concept of taking a period out of your year where you diet down, reap the benefits of getting lean, leverage it to gain muscle, and then use all that added tissue to turn into strength and performance. And then just also along the way, realizing, wow, my digestion's so much better. I'm able to eat more because I'm focusing on optimizing my digestion. Oh, if I get my gut health right, I'm able to absorb and utilize nutrients that much better, and my recovery is that much better. So I just began seeing so much value in the bodybuild or in the diet side of it, and how it not only impacted physique, but also impacted my ability to gain muscle and therefore gain strength over time. Um, and who does nutrition better than the bodybuilders? I'm a very all or nothing guy, and I was like, if I'm going to dive into nutrition, I'm going in all the way. I want to do this for real under the guidance of a bodybuilding coach, and I fell in love with the process, and it's become a part of my life just as much as training has, and it's allowed me to completely transform over the years, and I try to impart that on other people now.
I know I got access to three too, with Adam Fight, who was my first guy that really got me at least contemplating nutrition. But I've got three guys I can lean on, and man, like I said, I'll talk to you off air, man. I got something figured out. But let's go back. I have two questions.
Yeah.
The first one goes back towards the diet that you're on now, the physique that you've created now. Do you think now? Let's just say you are who you are now. When you played and you with that diet and you with that dialed in to your nutrition, how do you think that would have affected your performance? I know what it's affected your performance in the weight room, as a strong man, as a power lifter. But how do you think that physique changes, the leaner body mass, even at over 300 pounds, How do you think that would have affected you when the ball was snapped?
I would have been a way better player.
Gotcha.
I would have been a way better player. Now, with that said, I wouldn't have been able to diet down as
Right.
lean as I do these days. You know, I would never have an offensive lineman diet down to sub 10% body fat. But I would absolutely have them diet from 22% down to 16%. And you move so much better, you recover so much better, and with that body fat off of you, your sleep will be better, your blood pressure will be better, your ability to train harder, recover more effectively will be better, your conditioning, the ceiling for your work capacity, all so many different metrics would improve just by getting leaner. And as an offensive lineman, you do need to be heavy, but you do not need to be carrying all of this excess body fat that most of these guys are. It is not helping them.
Oh, all right, so I'm going to butt in because here, well, as you're talking, I'm looking back at my college career. The pros are the pros. They got it. They have. I'm talking about as you're talking this through, and I'm looking at like, and again, this day and age is a lot different. But I think what you have to sell nutrition wise might be a way to get somebody out of the portal or keep somebody from leaving. Um, but my question now to piggyback that would be so you're saying you wouldn't have them lean out to like 10%, and I agree. But based off of the way I watch the way you diet and you peak for stuff, and you have the right head strength coach, or you're the head strength coach and you call the shots, and we're just talking specifically linemen. We're not worried about you went up front. Um, would you figure out a plan? Like, say you're me and you are working together. I'm writing the programs. You're our nutrition liaison, and we're just focusing in on. I want our O line to look like the biggest, baddest, yoked fools come season, but them boys better be able to block and tackle and rush the passer and always displace the line of scrimmage in our advantage. Would you look at it like, okay, during the winter, even though that's a strength-based phase, would you look at like how strong can we get, and by maybe reducing some of their body fat percentage, and then use the 9-week summer to make them gain that extra advantage of lean body mass to get to, like, let's just say their so-called reporting weight. You know what I'm like? It almost would be the opposite. Like, hey, do we lean them up for the season? But at the season, we want them at their biggest and best condition, where in the early season or the winter program, they can be a little bit lighter going through spring. And I remember talking with Matt Wenning the first time I got to sit down with Matt when he was still competing. And he was somebody who was competing at super heavyweight. And it's very similar to this concept, was where a lot of people bulk up in the off season as powerlifters and then suck down to compete. He would suck down to like 265. And then once that competition phase, he would gradually build up to be a full 308. So is there any, let's see, is there a concept that could work if we had the ability to continue to have like a longer period of plan and not just a 1-year fix before the guy jumps in the portal?
Yeah, so I mean, you hit the nail on the head. So one thing you got to consider is we definitely do not want to be in a calorie deficit in season, right? That we need our energy. We need all the fuel we can get. So when do we apply that? Like you said, I would use the winter to do that. That we're the furthest away from in season. Now is the time where we don't need to be fully energized. We've got some time where we can really focus on your body composition, lean out, and leaning out after the season. It's going to help drop some of that inflammation. It's going to help the recovery process postseason. So I'd wrap up the season, take a week off, rest, recover, get your mind right, and then we hit the diet. We get into a calorie deficit. We strip off some of that body fat, lose the water weight, the inflammation. We spend that winter period. Big focus is leaning out, which, like you said, then that sets up the summer where we can leverage that new leaner state add the tissue, and we're ramping up towards the season where we're getting a little bit bigger, stronger, bigger, stronger. Once we hit in season, then we're in maintenance mode in terms of nutrition. From there, it's the nutrition shifts focus. Now it's not about changing your body composition. Now it is about purely fueling practice, fueling the game, optimizing hydration, optimizing how you feel, and then end the season, take a week off, diet the fat that we gain through the summer and the season, back off, recycle the process. And then year after year after year, you are adding on more and more and more contractile tissue. And here's the thing, it's a positive feedback loop. The more muscle mass you gain, the higher your metabolism goes, meaning your body has to burn more calories just holding on to all this new muscle. Muscle is metabolically expensive. Your body, it has to contract. Your body's got to push oxygen and nutrients to it. So when you're holding on to more muscle mass, your body's burning more and more and more calories at rest, which means you can eat more food and diet on bigger calorie loads. Like for example, for me, my diet calories are about 5,000 calories right now. For most people, that's a huge
Yeah.
surplus. But it's because over the years, I've built up a metabolism by adding tissue, turning myself into a food processing machine. So I can effectively diet while still eating a lot of food, which would be great for a big athlete because come wintertime, we can still be feeding them adequately to allow them to recover, to train effectively, but still trend them leaner and leaner and leaner, and then set them up for a summer where we increase the calories, add on more tissue, then maintain through the season. And I completely agree with Wenning. For any weight classed power lifter I would or middle class strongman I would work with, I tell them don't save it till right before competition to do this huge water cut. Don't diet down into the meet. You're just sabotaging your training at that point. Like weeks out from your meet, why do you want to be in a deficit and fighting an uphill battle when you need to be at your strongest? So I agree with Wenning, diet down further out from your meet and then add the calories in as you're ramping up into your meet so your training will linearly progress with your increase in muscle tissue, and you'll be energized, you're in a surplus, and it always ends up with a better result on the platform.
Well, yeah, it's funny because, like, personally, I remember we were talking as I got closer to chasing this deadlift meet that for whatever reason, I was doing a nice job of maintaining a fairly, outside of my pretzels, a fairly good diet plan for myself. But I just found like, regardless if I raised metabolic demand with a heavier training load or added a little more cardio, I was still in between like 283, 286, 283, 286. And my original goal was to do the weight at a 275 weight class, but then it was more of the number regardless of what I weighed. Now,
Right.
I didn't want to weigh 300 pounds again, but and that's when it was, as it got closer to the meet, I won't sit here and lie. At my age and where things were going, I was like, I don't know if I want to try to do this 10-pound weight cut in 2 weeks and possibly lose energy the day of the meet. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to roll with it. And I wind up competing exactly what I've been the last like 2 weeks in a row. And so let's go back to the second part. Then I got another question. We're talking more nutrition than probably people think we were gonna, but I mean, that's just good. I want to hear it. So you brought up Efferdine.
Mm.
Interesting diet, vertical diet, but I'll always remember when it first came out and he talked about Monster Mash. And I started laughing when I heard what Monster Mash was. I go, man, I've been cooking out of a wok for the last 10 years. I said, I'd rather eat with a spoon anyway. And now this guy's telling everybody rice and beef is the way to go. Now, and everybody talks about portions, like, like here's your protein portion, here's your vegetables, here's this. And everybody looks at the plate. For me, if I'm going to, I know how I am. Like if you saw how like even now when I shop, I won't lie to anybody. I'll tell you exactly how I shop because I am on such a weird day's deal. I buy my ground beef or turkey or chicken or shrimp. I don't care. Some type of protein source. And then I buy. I used to do the rice in the rice cooker. Now I buy, uh, go to the frozen food and I get my rice there so I can throw it in the microwave. And then I go to the canned vegetables. I get canned spinach, canned peas and carrots. I love garbanzo beans. I get garbanzo beans and green beans. And for me, it's easier to prepare. So now I'm going to eat things that I probably wouldn't have eaten. So I look at it like, is it going to the produce and doing it that way, where a lot of times I won't buy the spinach in the produce. I'll just go buy the chicken or the whatever, the beef and the rice. And now I find myself getting a better nutritious product in my monster whatever, because I had to figure out for me, who I am, what's the best way for me to get what I need and fill my body with fullness, so that I don't dip into a bag of pretzels and not eat the whole bag. Or I'm out and about and I'm hungry, so I'm going to go get a hamburger at Five Guys, which, once a week I go hit that if I'm on the road. But like, so is there, like, again, I know I got the answer, but my question would be to, like, people like in my case, I would say you're better off doing that than thinking you're going to go all in and then shop produce, and then you leave your celery and all your stuff and it just rots in your fridge because you were too lazy to prepare it. So give me, I mean, and I'm not telling you, oh yeah, that's a good way for you to do it, Hal, but I'm just saying, for a lot of people who are on the go, there's got to be at least some positive value to do it that way to get those types of nutrients, then not to eat them at all.
Yeah, so are you just saying the part of cooking it into your monster mash,
Yeah,
incorporating the vegetables?
just preparing food, like, you. It's like, for you, it's so ingrained in your lifestyle. So though that time doesn't, to me, when I watch you, that time is already in your routine. That time's not in my routine.
Right.
And at my age, it ain't getting in my routine. But you know what I can get in my routine? Pop a top, pour it in the bowl, stir it up, cook it up, shovel down my portions, and then I got 2 to 3 meals depending on how I prepare it. So I'm looking at it like, how do you create what I watch you do on a much lower scale, but knowing, like, hey man, if you eat these vegetables, not only is it going to help you in recovery, training, whatever, it's also going to fill you, so you're not necessarily going to go to your snack drawer.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're absolutely right. Increasing your food volume is going to be a great strategy for hunger management. So, when it comes to preparing certain meals, any way you can sneak in vegetables just within the meal itself. Like, I do a big egg scramble for one of my meals, and I'll sneak my spinach and peppers and mushrooms into that whole thing, scramble it all together. Or I'll do a bowl of oatmeal and I'll just add my fruit into it, things like that. So yeah, I love or using avocado or guacamole, mixing it into my chicken and rice with throwing some peas and carrots in there, heating it all up together, doing that in bulk. Those are great strategies to sneak in some of those extra nutrients. And then, like you said, it adds additional volume to the meal that, with minimal additional preparation, and that added food volume goes a long way, especially with fibrous things like adding vegetables or fruits. They're going to fill you up longer. They're going to satiate you longer and hold you over longer. And one of the biggest pillars of a fat loss diet is hunger management. And those are great strategies to manage hunger. And then also just, convenience. Like, sustainability has got to be a huge factor. If I'm writing a diet for someone, I need to make sure it's sustainable and realistic for them. I'm not going to write the same diet for the professional bodybuilder as I am for the guy who's got 3 kids, he's working a job, he's got all these obligations, he has minimal time to cook. I need to find ways to make it easier for that guy, less time consuming to prep his meals. So we're going to find how, okay, how can we just sneak some vegetables into, combine it into a meal where you barely just, like you said, just open up a can of green beans, open up a can of spinach or carrots, just dump it in, mix it in with your beef and rice, mix it in with your eggs. You're still getting great benefits from that, and it's going to add extra volume. You're going to be less hungry.
Okay, so now we talked about our periodized plan for offense and defensive line domination. I want to stick with the O-line on this question. I was talking with Duke Manyweather a couple of days ago, and we were talking about how he blocks his groups where he has a tackle group and then he has his inside the box, the inside guy
Mhm.
group, because he looks at it from training levers, the different movement patterns, and the different foot work drills that a tackle
Sure.
will have to do versus the inside guys. What do you think there's that much difference in O-line play now? Because again, we've taken the strength out of strength and conditioning. Most of these guys are way athletic. The physicality of football in itself, it's a different physicality. It's still ridiculously violent. It's just a different game. I think the game has changed and has really uh, disproportionately hurt O-line play because 7-on-7 has become the way that we recruit. And that's a story for another day. But what would you think the way we see the sizes changing, the skill sets of the outside guys versus the inside guys? Would you change diets for a tackle versus a guard or a center? And what would that ideal power five, and let's lump them up. You've got group of five, power five, NFL, and then division 2 or 3, because that's those genetic skill sets are going to change too. What do you see from like ideal body fats? Like I remember we had a guy that they showed me that wasn't on the team anymore, and he was 375 pounds, and in a bod pot he was 25% body fat. They go, well, what would you do? I say, make sure nothing. The guy's got 25% body fat at 375. He's carrying, almost 300 pounds of lean body mass. So what would be good ideas for these strength coaches that are out there? Because I'm just telling you, the more I'm talking to my former guys and talking to you, these are the things that are going to separate people from jumping in the portal, taking more money for no other reason than to take money instead of staying with guys who know them and can help them get what their goal is anyway, is play on Sundays in the National Football League.
Yeah. So there's a little bit to unpack there. So just looking at the demands of the position. So, like, if we look at D line first, I think there is quite a bit of difference between the demands of the edge guy versus the interior defensive lineman. So, like, we would separate the training a little bit for the edge guys. They would do some more of the speed work that the linebackers were doing because they might have to drop into coverage. They've got to rush the passer. They have more of a speed demand and open field demand than the interior guys who we treated just purely as bigs. Now for O-line, they're definitely, I mean, in today's game, those tackles, they're making their money as pass protectors. They're going against the edge guys who are the freakiest athletes on the field. So you definitely, ideally with a tackle, you're prioritizing a guy who's more athletic, who can move in space, who can bend, versus the guard who, generically speaking, is more the bigger guy, the stronger guy. He's got more of a run blocking demand. Now, whether that warrants for offensive line truly different training, I don't necessarily know that. Maybe for, from the skill side of the football individual work, I mean, yeah, you're probably putting a bigger emphasis on the pass pro for the tackles than you are the guards, maybe. Now, from a diet side, I push back on the idea that there just needs to be a generic body weight or a generic body composition that a guy needs to fit into because they play X position. I would say look at the individual and assess what does this guy need? Does he move poorly? Is he slow with poor movement ability and is he carrying excess body fat? Regardless of if he is a tackle or a guard, I would say this guy probably needs to get leaner. And that's not because he's a guard or a tackle. That is because looking at him as an individual, I assess his game on film and I say, what are his deficits as a player? And how can we address that as a nutritionist or a strength coach? Every guy's metabolism is going to be different. So, the amount of calories any guy can handle, whether they're a guard, whether they're 330, whether they're 295, it's going to be different. So I see diet as so much more individual, more of an individual assessment. What are their weaknesses? Can we address it nutritionally? What is their metabolism like? That's going to affect how many calories we're giving the guy. Generically speaking, yeah, sure, you might want your tackle to be leaner. But like you said, I mean, if you've got a big 350-pound tackle, but he moves great, he's got his body composition's good, he's carrying a ton of lean mass. I'm not just going to look at him and say, because you have this number on the scale, we need to get you lighter. I would look at him and
Like
say,
O-line coaches do.
yeah, exactly. I would
You got to
say,
be
well,
303 and a half.
yeah, I would say, well, does he move good? Then why make him smaller? Some of these guys being 350, that's a strength within their game. Like being the biggest guy on the field is a benefit for them.
Yeah.
But then there's some guys out there who are they're fat, they're sloppy, and all that extra weight is a weakness within their game. And I think that's just an individual assessment.
Well, before I ask the next question, I saw a gentleman join a group. I don't know if he's still on, but my very first Pop Warner football coach was on. And if he's still on, Coach Galenti, don't ever forget, you friggin' taught me how to play ball, not anybody else. You and that Inwood Buccaneer team. So I know where it all started. So I appreciate you jumping on if you're still on. Okay, so now we've got a question from my man, the underground strength coach, Zach Evanesh. I'm going to hit it up. It's for Big John. Coach Heck, what are you seeing with incoming freshmen or the players from the transfer portal? Are they coming in better or worse than the past few years when you were in college? Is something happening in a positive or negative way at the high school level?
Well, I think there's a couple things to unpack there. I think transfer portal is negatively affecting guys' developments because they're not in one system. Like as you know, like if you want to truly develop, you've got to remain in a program for an extended period of time. If you're just in one program, then you bounce to another team, well then the new strength and conditioning program has to waste time learning you, assessing you, introing you in. Like we get our new transfer portal guys, we don't know anything about them. Like we don't know what training they've been doing, what they're capable of in the weight room, and they probably don't know either. They've been in three different programs in the last 3 years. They've had no continuity. One program's doing power cleans, then the next program isn't, and then one program they're squatting to depth, then the next program, they're quarter squat. Like there's just no continuity anymore. So and I think that has absolutely negatively impacted guys from a development standpoint. Now, coming out of high school, it feels like these high school kids are becoming more and more specialized and treating themselves more and more like like these high school kids, they're going to private trainers now. Like I've got a few high school kids I work with within my business, and I mean, they're talking about, well, in Florida, there's no more school zoning anymore. You can transfer high schools year to year. And so I've got, a kid who's like, oh, I'm considering transferring to this bigger powerhouse program. I'm going to live in an apartment next school year so I can be at this bigger, better program. And, we're talking about training. He's like, well, I train with my team, but then I go do private coaching with this separate coach, and they're getting like 12 workouts. I think a lot of these high school kids, they're not playing other sports in the off season.
Yeah.
They're not playing basketball or track and field anymore. They're just totally specialized in football year round. And I don't know. What do you think? To me, that
Well, I
I
can
don't
tell
like it.
you there's a couple of things. In the college realm, the transfer portal is definitely a detriment. Like when it comes
Yeah.
to training, you said a few things, and I've said this like I mean, most of you all know now that I have transitioned away from coaching at the time. You never say you're retired. You never say never. Coaching is crazy. Plus, I do coach and I do consult with a lot of people in my role with dynamic fitness and strength. But as a person who now works in the equipment industry, one of the things that I discuss with our ownership a lot is what's going to happen with facilities. And luckily for me, the way I was brought up, I was always a hybrid guy. I needed tools. I was a master craftsman. I wanted every kind of tool that I could get. And as you know, John, a lot of these colleges tools are 40 racks, reverse hyper glute ham combos, and that's about it. Maybe some jammer arms. Now some of the guys, because the equipment companies are getting super smart and innovative, they'll drop a lat pull down on the back end. But the truth is, it's a free weight dominated approach, and its foundational movements are what I call the highly skilled lifts that we all kind of grew up on or were able to be exposed to in our training of, variations of the Olympic lifts, variations of the power lifts. And to me, what I'm seeing is I will not be surprised if the rise of HIT doesn't come back or some version of it, because I'm not going to spend time worrying about a kid that comes in the spring transfer portal, who's here for 5 months, who's the best football player on my team and going to make me look good on Saturdays, worried about how much he squats, cleans, benches, when I can take that guy and get the lean body mass and conditioning I need through some type of strength circuit. And now he thinks Big House is the man. Big House is my dog. He took care of me. And I really just did what we did with our pro guys is, small doses of excellence, and kept them in shape, kept them healthy, and let them go ball out and make me look real damn good on Saturdays. I think there's going to be some type of paradigm shift when these coaches continue to see how this transfer portal works. Now, on the other hand, if you get these freshmen, and again, when we started the block system and it hit in college where we people would call it leveling, but like you had block 0,
Right.
and every year a guy was there, you could progress them through your stages of training, and they never got stale because everything always changed. You were able to make 5 years of tremendous gains, whether it was jumping, sprinting, lifting, and a lot of times, because the way we put together our programming, it was synergistically tied into what the position coach. So we were making legitimately better football players, not just bigger, faster, stronger, shittier football players. And now that's over. Like we were talking the other day, a couple of guys, and I was like, what used to be a 6-week or 8-week summer introductory program for a freshman or a newcomer, you got 7 days to figure it out before you got to implement them into this plan. And speaking of that, I visited the new strength coach for football at UNC Charlotte yesterday, and when you were talking about some of these models, he's got I don't know if it's unique. To me, it was unique. I've not heard a coach explain how he breaks up his people, not like in levels of like training age, but like in needs, hypertrophy, strength, power, things
Right.
like that, absolute strength. And the same thing on the field. So he's got 3 different groups in the weight room, 3 different groups on the field, like which guys need more A cell, D cell, which guys come out of a 3-point stance, which guys are more linear. And I even said to him on a text that when I got home, I said, that to me is some game-changing stuff. Like that's something that resonated me on the drive home. So when you get back, he gave me an open invite. We'll go. I want to go watch that training. I want to go watch that. So that's some of the things that I think. I think that, and again, I'm not saying that I was ahead, but every time I talk to somebody, that's all I hear about. House, you were ahead of the game in college. House, you were ahead of the game in the NFL. House, you were this. Hey, I just looked at a different perspective, and I got fortunate that I had great players that made my programming look like it was second to none. But I just see this hybrid model coming back to fruition because you don't necessarily. Now, again, there's tremendous amount of Olympic lifting coaches that can teach a power clean very, very quickly. I like to spread it out because I had a bunch of different variations of movements that they had to learn because they were part of our exercise pool. So I preferred a longer planned approach to get them to clean, especially when it's not their sport. I wanted to take my time with it because that was part of our developmental process. Now, I'll be honest with you. I don't know if I'd even do a clean at any time in the college environment. We didn't do it in the pros unless guys had decent enough technique coming out of college.
Right.
But you saw our model. If a guy could catch a clean and he liked cleaning, he got the clean.
Right.
If he didn't want to clean, he didn't have to. And even if you liked the clean and it didn't look good, you didn't clean. And that's where like utilizing jumps and throws. And again, this is something that the Charlie Francis guys and, Coach Buddy Morris, Tom Mislinski, and those guys, they were bigger fans of that to use as what we would call total body movement. So I think you're going to see some paradigm shifts. And I think that it's going to me, that's my preferable way to train athletes anyway. So for me, it wouldn't be a paradigm shift. But for like, when I look at it from a sales standpoint, I'm like, 40 rack rooms are going to become 25 rack rooms so they can have an accessory area.
Yeah.
The high school space is you brought up the negative part of the high school space. The positive part about the high school space is, again, is the kids that don't have those opportunities to leave, and the increased importance and the increased of expertise that has now become part of the high school strength and conditioning community. I mean, that's the most gratifying thing that I've seen in probably the last 15 years is how high school strength and conditioning coaches are now valued almost to the point where, like I've told people when I first created the Block Zero concept, it was an introductory program for the second semester 8th grader to prepare for high school. Well, I think things are going so well that now where I think the most beneficial strength program you can be is the middle school strength coach. Because I think elementary school, you have to just learn the free play. Like you laugh. I was laughing about this because I'm getting ready to speak on this at a conference. But I think when you look back now and you're like, yeah, I want to be a PA teacher. I just throw a kickball out and let the kids do whatever they wanted. Well, now I'm thinking, God, I wish they still did that because these kids don't have free play. They're in organized sports at an early age, like you said. They're specialized. Most of the coaches are volunteers, and I give them credit, but they're not experts. So it's really just a babysitting class for the parents to get their kids to do something because if they didn't, they'd sit at home.
Right.
There's a lot of things from societal that I can get into with that, but a lot of it is a lot of us don't feel that our kids are safe in the streets anymore. The communities are not what they used to be. A lot of people are transient, so it's not like you got 8 generations of people that live within 4 blocks that they knew, hey, that's Joe Ken's kid, don't mess with him.
Right.
Just don't mess with him, and then vice versa. So it's I think that the elementary education system needs to just focus on recess and free play within their curriculum and let these people have exploratory learning where, hey man, again, I always say, roll a kickball out, let those kids figure out what game they're going to play. I know that's what they did for us. Sometimes we actually played kickball. Sometimes we played dodgeball, and that was co-ed. We played dodgeball. It was girls and boys trying to blow fools up with the ball. Middle school, now we get a little bit more of the introductory of organization and learn how to movement before muscle and understand body weight mechanics but build strength through internal strength, who you are. And then as they get closer to that high school, and again, I know some people go, oh, we'll put weights in their hands. kid can't do a pull-up and kid can't do a push-up, well, why would I need to put weights in his hands? I know we got a lot of people who believe in that. And then that 8th grade year, now let's expose them to the barbell. Let's expose them so that when they go into their high school strength and conditioning program, their confidence is high that they can at least handle their capabilities.
Agreed. Absolutely.
So we got a couple of more minutes. We probably want to keep this to an hour. I had most of the questions that usually come through for me with you was nutrition. Somebody did ask me about readiness programming for the strongman, for a strongman, how I would do that. The biggest thing that I would tell you is about individuality versus generality. A lot of it is, if I know your negatives or your so-called improvement areas, then we're going to build very specific programming off of that. If you're fairly healthy, then we have general packages. But everything that I've learned is, if you can create a sustainable template, people don't like the term plug and play, but that's what it is. It's plug and play. You got to have you have this extensive exercise pool that becomes intensive for specific people. Though there's several generalities I will say for strongmen that I don't think enough strongmen do enough of. And this is where you can put this in the readiness portion of an athlete's pre-activity prep work, is single limb movements. And let's remember, why is that important? Outside of the static movements and the big lift movements, what is strongman doing? Carrying and loading, and they're moving. So you have to do single limb movement work, and you have to do some form of conditioning. I thought, and generally, when you look at some of the better strength coaches that have, strong men who have been successful, men and women, they have done other sports and they know how to move, even the biggest of the best. So from a readiness standpoint, it's one piece of a templated puzzle. And then the exercise, there's Big Duke. We already talked about you, Big Duke. You missed out, doggy. So the templates are key. And I think John would say the same with his nutrition programming and the way he trains his athletes. After that, the key is establishing this pool of exercises and then funneling them out for different parts of the year. And then especially with what I call these readiness programs that are trying to be very, very unique. Like, as I'm rebuilding through these various injuries that I've had through the last couple of years, I already know that a change in my personal readiness program for activation will be isometric work. Like, based off of the injuries that I'm fighting and what the rehab protocols, this is where studying the PT work, studying athletic training work, studying some of the things that you see in rehab, those are the key components of what the readiness program should look like. Now, you want to do the high volume winning warm-up type of readiness, most of the time those guys don't have the issues that a lot of the team sport athletes have. They haven't had them beaten down. They haven't been, and a lot of times if you get them early enough, they've not been exposed to poor training habits. So that's how I would answer that question on the readiness and the exercise choices. Anything pop up on your end, John?
One thing you said there that resonated with me was putting the single limb work into the readiness. I thought one of the most powerful tools I utilize in terms of transferring to my farmer carry and my yoke when I was competing was single leg work. Because you're right. You're so much a strongman. You're moving and you're spending time on one limb. So whether that's a heavy low box step up or rear foot elevated dumbbell split squats or single leg RDLs, all those things, tremendous carryover, and the readiness is a great place to put it. And I'm very intrigued by incorporating the isometric work in. I think that nobody's doing that in strength sports.
And what's funny is you see it starting to pop back up. And this is when it first started getting very popular in strength and conditioning for sport, is in the early 2000s when Jay Schroeder was training Adam Archuleta.
Yeah.
They did a lot of overcoming isometric work. And again, you've seen my programming right now. A lot of my rebuild is a lot of isometric work, and I've turned that into some things with some static overcome by dynamic pairs. There's definitely something there, and I know because I like to build that stuff in, because I don't think rehab is just a part of your training plan. It's just, I know where it fits for me, and when with our athletes, all those little finicky things is a great way to put up front, because it helps you focus for the main lifts of the day. Okay,
Agreed.
so we're going to wrap this up. Here's what I'm going to tell everybody. We will be doing this more than once. Send us questions throughout the weeks and the months. We'll try to fill them in as we go. Next time we'll be on Big John's site, so Big John will become the host. We'll flip-flop this. I think I got this figured out. I'm going to download this. I'll send it to John, a copy. We'll put them up on our YouTube sites once I get that all figured out. We'll chop it up and all that other stuff. But we had a really good, a pretty good flow of people coming through. Probably didn't think people would go an hour. Maybe sometimes we don't. So I want to thank Big John, because me and Big John are boys, and Big John's killing it. And till next time, you can find me at Big House Power. John, tell them where they can find you, brother.
You can find me on IG at what_the_heck71, what the heck 71. You can find me on YouTube, John Heck Performance, and then keep your eyes peeled. I've got my website launching, my company coming out, Hammer and Chisel Performance. Stay tuned on that.
He didn't see I didn't even know the name. That's a good brick and mortar name. Make sure you trademark that sucker.
I'm going to.
All right, Big John, man, we'll talk to you. My best to D and
Yes,
Logan,
sir.
and let's rock and roll, baby. Peace.
Yes, sir. Peace.